All right, here we go, friends. It's Vince on the RR Show, and if you'd be so kind, please share the show and leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy all of these fun stories. Okay, so I'm looking through what we got today, and I've got one. Let me count it. 2, 3. TIFU by turning my wife rabid. That's a good one. That'll be the 4th story in. Then we've got another one. TIFU by letting a goat into the house. That'll be the final story for today, but all about TIFU, as I'm sure you've already surmised, here on this episode of the RR Show. So our first story is from the Jake Eddy, of course, under r/TIFU, and the title is this: TIFU by getting held hostage. I am a serial wheeler dealer, a horse trader. I've spent countless Saturday mornings digging through fishing lures at an estate sale, haggling over art at the local church fundraiser, most of which could be filed under dentist waiting room core, and talking with old men at local auctions, especially thumbing through the local classifieds. Our local classifieds are posted in a weekly printed paper called the Bulletin Board. Inside the bulletin board, you can find listings for everything from old trucks to shotguns and fax machines, and one collection of Miley Cyrus memorabilia that has been listed no less than 5 years at my last count. None of those things would be my undoing. However, a 2-year long goose chase of vintage vinyl records would. In the summer of 2021, my brother showed me an ad for a large collection of vinyl and stereo equipment. Jazz, country, bluegrass, Wirt County, West Virginia. We called the guy in hopes of unearthing a pile of Marantz tube stereos surrounded by unopened copies of Tony Rice's Manzanita and all the good Blue Note Coltrane stuff. He never answered, but he did call back a few weeks later to let us know he was working on alphabetizing his collection and would contact us soon with some times to meet him. I texted him in the fall to follow up, but I never heard back. My last correspondence with him was a text I sent on January 21st, 2022 at 12:15 p.m. Still have records for sale? I never got a text back and figured it was a lost cause. After all, if I were sitting on a bunch of first-pressing Birds LPs or a signed copy of Bitches Brew, I may be liable to change my mind too. My brother, however, persisted. He became friendly with the guy, and they would attempt to meet up a few times, always being foiled by some act of God. Can't meet on tour. Next week would be better. I have COVID. This would continue until February of 2023. Over a year since I had given up. They made plans to meet while I was out of town, and I pouted for long enough that my brother told the guy he couldn't come without me. So they finally settled on meeting the following weekend on March 4th. We were all free then. The morning of March 4th, my brother called him for his address, and he informed him that he did not have an address, but did have some extremely complicated directions he could share. Lucky us. 4 miles on X Road, veer right on Y Parkway, turn up blank pass, etc., etc., etc. The directions took us to a ranch-style home that sat on a hill behind a split-rail fence off a 2-lane state highway. No house number, no cell service. None of this is uncommon in rural West Virginia. We had zero doubts about the safety of this meetup. We'd done hundreds just like it in the past. My wife rode along with a crochet project just to keep her busy. And when we got there, she decided to stay in the car and work on finishing her sweater. So I pecked her on the cheek. We took off up the steps to his door, which faced adjacent to the road. My brother knocked on the door, and we could hear a loud electronic music on the other side. No answer. I knocked a bit harder, and the door quickly opened about 4 inches. Who is it? We're here for the records. That's when we first saw him. He was 5-foot-something man who was roughly 50 years old. A tad overweight, and a tad too old for the sunglasses he was wearing indoors. And more than a tad too spray-tanned. He opened the door to let us into what I can only describe as the back of a Spencer's Gifts. Blacklight posters and lava lamps cover the walls. There were old Star Trek movies playing on the TV and lots of fog. I couldn't see more than 3 inches in front of my face and was immediately disoriented and uncomfortable. We followed him about 8 feet into the middle of the room and never spoke as much as hello before he launched into a spirited story about how his son had gotten into some big trouble with his computer, but was much better now. He spoke fast and with an anxiety-inducing cadence while tiny round spit cannonballs fired off from the end of his dry, cracked lips. He would often run out of breath while finishing the longest run-on sentence you ever heard and gasp to start a new line. He was like a human typewriter that huffed paint. He reminded me a bit of those preachers that you see on TV, the ones who scream until their every vessel is prominently displayed on their forehead like an interstate atlas. Like every story he told had the potential to save a life or ruin one. He had lots of stories. Stories about local businesses ripping him off, stories about shoddy handymen, stories about a mother and a daughter he knew that we could party with, among other things. Each story filling him with more and more rage. Stories about government snipers on the hill behind his house. The plywood over the windows keeps them from getting a good shot on me. Stories about a machine under his living room that kept him from sleeping at night. I can hear it start like a generator. It sounds like a tractor. It's supposed to draw me out of hiding. They don't want me to sleep. Stories about being targeted by local police. They think I'm crazy. They threaten me. They come out of here and watch me across the road. With each story, he became louder, more vulgar, and seemingly more paranoid. I could see my brother shaking. If anyone knocked on that door right now, I'd blow their heads clean off. I wouldn't care who it was or why they were here. He motioned to a gun in his pants as he screamed, "If they don't stop, I'll make them stop. Why are you really here?" As we backed away from him, he had positioned himself between us and the exit, where he would tell his final story. "When the lights are off in here, a blue light dances around the room. It taunts me, it tells me things. It's trying to kill me. It watches my every move. I've been called crazy for years, but finally, I'm gonna prove it. You guys believe me, don't you? Please believe me. I'll show you." He began turning off every light in the house while telling us to go to his bedroom. For the first time in my life, I felt scared. Truly scared for my life, especially scared for my little brother's life. I could see in his eyes that he felt the same. His legs were shoulder width apart, his fists were tight. I wondered how we could get out of here. Lunge for his gun, lava lamp to the face, run for the door and try to knock him down. I felt like I was seconds away from having to take this guy's life. Crazy or not, I wasn't planning on finding out what really happened when the lights went out. As he approached the last tiny lamp in the room, I put my flashlight on and blurted out the only thing I could think of. "My wife is in the car!" All of the color drained from his face, and he became visibly more angry, but also extremely confused. As he looked around the room, my brother ran for the door and opened it, and we all three went on the porch. He then started sobbing and crying, begging us to stay, begging us to follow him and the blue light to his bedroom. Once we got onto the steps, he started following us and shouted more conspiracy nonsense and vulgarity as we bolted down the stairs. We got to my car, flung mud everywhere as we drove through his yard to get on the road. No good records? No, babe. No good records. As we recounted the story to my horrified wife, we realized we had been inside his home just over 2 hours. We never saw one record, never saw one CD. Not one speaker, not one turntable. Nothing. Furthermore, from r/TIFU, we've got one from MiddleAd7885. TIFU by trusting the dog to watch the house while I enjoyed Mother's Day. I'm a 29-year-old mother in Alabama. Last night, my husband, with the help of our male Pomsky, caught a possum trying to get in the dog door and scared her off. We thought that would be that. Spoiler alert, we were wrong. Well, today is Mother's Day, a wonderful day for families to appreciate the hard work mothers do every day. It was a good day. My daughter got me a lawn gnome and a cute faux flower arrangement, while my husband got me flowers, and we had barbecue with all the moms in my family. It was a good day, till I got home. We got home a while ago, and I got my girl to go to bed, my dog's on the couch, and my husband is playing video games. I enjoy gaming too, and I want to get a vase for my flowers. I open my cabinet door and I see a small baby possum, then two, then three. Apparently, they made their way in via the dog door and has been exploring. And my darling dog just let it happen. It's midnight now and I just spent the last 2, maybe 3 hours with my husband, catching baby possums, putting them in laundry baskets and storage totes, checking our back in case Mama comes back from her Mother's Day spa trip. Each baby was different. One ran the 1,000-yard dash on sight till I got his tail. One just lumbered around but kept trying to get out of the basket, so we had to turn it over. And one was ready to go. Little Spitfire lunged at my husband a time or two and did not stop hissing at us. All this while praying my wild child does not wake up, so I don't have to explain that we cannot keep the babies. I think we got them all. I don't know. I can't see any more. I guess only time will tell, but at least I have a story for later and pictures. Update. It's currently 6 in the morning and another little guy made his way in, got my dog's food bowl. Apparently, that is what was needed for my furry son to do his job, because he came in, got my husband up. With one more sweep, he found one more, bringing the total of 5 rather cute marsupials with B&E charges. And Mama hasn't been seen yet. He couldn't handle 2 at once, so he had to get me up. So I came out of the bedroom to my husband holding the babies up, perched on his hand like some sort of redneck Disney princess, just to get my own little guy, take him outside to join the others. Hopefully the last update. We had been keeping an ear out, but I believe there was only 5. We just gave them all to the rehabber and, as expected, consoled my daughter because she wanted to keep them. I think my husband low-key wanted to as well. We know there can be up to 13, so we'll be on alert for the next few days, and we'll let you know if we find more, but as of now, I think we're closing down our possum daycare. Thanks for all the comments and the assistance with how to take care of the Joeys. Moving on in the r/TIFU files, we've got one from Kamikaze786, TIFU by sending a YouTube link to a customer as a case resolution. So I work in a software-related customer services role. My work involves picking up cases that our clients have raised and answering them / troubleshooting their issues with the HR software that we provide. This is normally done all via case comments / emails and the occasional phone call. Sometimes I'll also attach a link to a handy guide for the customer, which I feel may be of use to them. Me and my friend are big Star Wars fans, and he's recently started playing Jedi Survivor. For those of you who don't know, this is a dark, soulsy type of game, and boss fights are usually quite intense. In this game, the developers added in a boss fight with a guy called Rick the Door Technician. He's just a basic grunt, but when you face him, a whole health bar appears at the top and boss music plays too. He's just a one-hit kill enemy though. an Easter egg referencing the SNL live skit where Kylo Ren becomes Matt the technician in an undercover boss style episode. Well, I was trying to explain this context to my friend at work who had just gotten to Rick the door technician in the game. So I sent him a link to a YouTube video of the SNL skit while I was working on a live case. I didn't think any more on this, went straight back to my open case that I was working on. I typed up my resolution to the customer's case and thought that I had copied a link to my clipboard for the guide I wanted to attach on a particular part of the software. I was in such a rush to get the work done, and in my haste, I pasted the YouTube link to the SNL skit to one of our biggest customers. The client was confused and reached out and lodged a complaint to my manager. I am now awaiting a disciplinary action for browsing YouTube at work and not following proper customer contact procedure. Our next story is from Legit Grizzly. TIFU by Turning My Wife Rabid. My wife works as a restoration ecologist for our local parks department. Today, she came home from a day in the field complaining that she did not feel well. She was unsure if it was a ragweed allergy or a mild summer bug. Now, I like to think I'm a hardworking dude. I take pride in providing what I can for my wife, and I try my hardest to make sure she's comfortable and healthy. She hates taking medicine even when she needs it, and unless I give it to her, she'll usually just suffer through it. So I went downstairs to grab her what I thought was a vitamin C tablet. That poor, innocent, trusting woman took a swig of water, popped it into her mouth without a second thought, and began chewing vigorously. That's when it happened. First, her eyes got wide. Then they became downright crazed. When she opened her mouth, what came out wasn't just a gargled scream of confusion and horror, but a frothing cloud of pink citrus-scented foam. My loving, beautiful wife had been transformed into a wild, rabid beast. Choking and sputtering like a racehorse on Derby Day, she bolted to the bathroom, leaving a trail of pink, foamy slobber in her wake. After the expletives subsided, she re-entered the room to find me, bewildered and resigned to her cold fury. She uttered one sentence that I'll never forget. That was an Alka-Seltzer. After a tense moment of me feverishly planning a grandiose apology routine while looking for the nearest escape route, she burst out laughing. I laughed along with her until after a moment, and with a warm sternness I've come to appreciate, she sobered her face and said, "Now clean up the bathroom, you jackass." And our final story for the day from r/TIFU, from Emerald Encrusted. TIFU by letting a goat into the house. Obligatory, this was over a decade ago when I was a teenager. My family lived in a semi-rural area at the time, and we kept a few farm animals. My brother, for the sake of simplicity, I will refer to him as Rayloff, had taken upon himself to adopt a beautiful white goat. This goat was quite young and had been dropped off at our place after its owner, an ex-wife of my older brother, decided she didn't want it as a house pet, but I digress. Rayloff loved this goat. It was his pride and joy. He had beautiful white fur and yellowish eyes, and was the friendliest goat you ever saw. Never bucked, let you pet him, and would eat all sorts of things. By contrast, our family's dog, a Rottweiler, was not friendly to the goat. She often paced back and forth at the fence of his pen, growling at him. One time, we tried to make them make friends by putting them both on leashes and letting them close to each other. This didn't work out and probably merits its own story, but after that incident, Rayloff told us we had better not come near his goat. Our parents also stepped in and told us as much, that was Rayloff's goat, and we would leave him alone if we knew what was good for us. One fateful Saturday on Rayloff's birthday, long after any drama involving the goat had subsided, our parents took him out for a quality time day trip with just the three of them. We had been tasked with ensuring that the table was set for dinner when they got back, as they were going to be bringing takeout Chinese food home for dinner. We did the smart thing and set the table as soon as lunch was finished, so we wouldn't need to rush it before dinner, and then set to playing around in the yard, doing whatever teenagers without electronics did 13 years ago when they played outside. When most of the afternoon had passed and it was close to the time we expected Rayloff and Mom to return home, I and my brother were jumping on the trampoline. With a gasp, my brother gestured towards the goat pen. There was the goat, somehow out of its pen, eating grass by the tire swing. We knew this was a big problem, as the dog would doubtless tear that goat to bits. The dog was currently laying in a patch of sun, not looking our way. We thought if we were quiet enough, we'd be able to wrestle the goat back into his pen without the dog noticing. But by this time, the goat was no longer familiar with us. He had been tended to only by Rayloff for so long that he was wary of our approach. We lunged for him, managed to seize him by the horns in an attempt to drag him back into his pen, which he promptly refused. And then he let out an angry "Mah!" That was a terrible goat impression. It all happened so fast. We saw our dog sit up straight and look at us, and in seconds she was dashing our way. I shouted to my brother to head off the dog while I let the goat free from my grasp. The last thing I wanted was a dead goat. The goat tore off away from the dog, taking a flying leap over the sandbox, its belly impacting the edge of the sandbox on the way down. He let out a pained bleat and kept running. The dog, despite having been slowed down by my brother, was gaining fast. They both ran in a wide arc around the yard as they headed toward the house. I saw my chance. I ran back up the steps, threw open the door, and the goat charged straight up the steps and into the house. I slammed the door right behind it, knowing that the dog would have easily gone in after the goat. Our house was laid out in such a way that the back door leads almost directly into the kitchen, which was where we had a rather old flimsy table and would eat simpler meals at. This was the table we had set up. Immediately after I slammed the door, I heard a thump from inside, followed by the unmistakable shattering sound of ceramic plates and cups hitting the floor. At the same time, I heard the sound of the garage door opening. My parents and brother had returned carrying several packets of Chinese food. Rayloff's immediate response after seeing us standing in the front of the back door, making guilty eye contact, the dog eagerly facing the door, was, "What did you do to my goat?" It was like somehow he knew. I tried to explain what happened, but my parents refused to believe that the goat had gotten out of its pen on its own. My dad had to wrangle the wretched creature, which had made its way to the living room with its muddy hooves, and drag it back into its pen while Rayloff was tasked with restraining the dog. I had to clean up the trashed kitchen, which included an overturned dinner table and a host of ceramic shards all over the floor. Ultimately, nobody was harmed, but it really sucked watching the others eating Chinese food while I was given dry bread for dinner. So thanks for being with us. The RR Show is a production of Evergreen Podcasts and Wessler Media. Now, if you'd be so kind, please follow or subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling extra nice, you might as well leave a 5-star review. But for more, visit the website, rrshow.com. That is rrshow.com. I'm your host, Vince. Thank you to my producer, Kevin, and we'll see you next time here on The RR Show.